Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Bud Light. Bud Light sales collapsed another 30% this week, and their parent company, Anheuser-Busch, is selling off 8 of their top beer brands and breweries to raise some cash by the end of September. This is a very sudden thing. We hadn't heard anything about it. They just had a quarterly financial report, and they could have told people this was coming, but for some reason, they didn't want to. Probably sends the wrong message that they need to raise cash after they lost $390 million in revenues over the Bud Light fiasco. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Coming from the New York Post, Bud Light sinks another 26% amid the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco. Of course, when they say 26%, they're only talking about revenues and not volumes. The direct email that I get from Bump Williams shows that Bud Light trends for the current single week are off 25.9% for revenue because they had price increases and that increased their revenue overall compared to last year, and negative 29.3% for volume, approximately 30%. It remains in the same range as recent weeks with no notable increase in magnitude, either up or down in sales. So their sales continue to collapse on a week-by-week basis, off around 30% volume every single week. And that is having a tremendous impact on their profitability. It's also causing them to do massive layoffs. They've laid off between 350 and 400 people in their marketing and office departments as a result of Bud Light crashing their sales. And now, in another month or so, they're going to be forced to lay off production people, which unfortunately seems like it's going to be in the 1,000 to 2,000 people range, at least. Keep in mind, another company that supplies glass bottles to Bud Light lost 645 employees. So now there are over 1,000 employees lost as a result of the Bud Light controversy, and that's just what we know. It's probably thousands more. Back to the New York Post, Bud Light sales continue to tank in the wake of the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco, while the tarnished brand's rivals keep swiping away market share, according to the latest data. The Anheuser-Busch brand sales plunged by 25.9% by revenue during the week ended July 29th, extending the downward spiral since Bud Light's ill-fated tie-up with the transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney on April 1st, according to data from Nielsen IQ and Bump Williams Consulting. This data comes from off-premise sales, meaning a grocery store or a convenience store or a beer distributor where you'd buy the beer and you would take it off premises to consume it. A lot less people doing that with Bud Light and the rest of the Anheuser-Busch brands. Bud Light has been dethroned as the nation's top-selling beer for the past 3 months after Mulvaney's shout-out led to a nationwide boycott. Modelo Especial is expected to vault into the #1 spot for the entire year by the end of this month in August, according to Dave Williams and Bump Williams of Bump Williams Consulting. Bud Light controls an 8.4% market share compared with Modelo's 8.2% market share, according to the Nielsen IQ data. The Constellation-owned brand, Modelo Especial, which posted a 14.8% increase in sales last week, isn't the only beneficiary of Bud Light's demise. Rivals Coors Light are at 20.7%, Miller Lite 19.25%, and Yuengling Lager at 22.5%, enjoying double-digit spikes, the most recent data show. Anheuser-Busch reported that revenue has taken a nearly $400 million hit since the backlash began in its latest quarterly earnings released last week. Quote, "The situation hasn't gotten any worse, nor has it gotten any better for Bud Light," Williams said. Yeah, that is the word on the industry, and that's the word from the experts and even from Anheuser-Busch. They've lost around 30% of their overall volume for Bud Light, and that is now going to affect how they're presented in stores and how they're presented at bars and restaurants. And it's going to affect them in a very negative way, meaning less shelf space, less taps available in restaurants and bars. And that means even lower sales because they've had every advantage going for them during this boycott time where they've had promotion, they've had excess inventory all over the place, they've had really cheap beer, even free beer, and yet their sales are still tanking. On July 27th, Anheuser-Busch laid off 400 employees, or about 2% of its workforce, as part of a restructuring, the brewery said. It's really more like 350 to 400. Nobody really knows the number because they haven't told us. Most of the positions were in marketing in offices in St. Louis, New York, and Los Angeles. Anheuser-Busch CEO Brendan Whitworth said in a statement, "While we never take these decisions lightly, we want to ensure that our organization continues to be set for future long-term success." It looks like the layoffs basically were getting rid of assistants and one extra layer of management within their marketing and promotion, something they probably wanted to do anyway, but now because their sales are so destroyed, they have an excuse to say, hey, we can't afford you people anymore, and just fired a bunch of people. Many Anheuser-Busch distributors say they don't expect to win back customers who've left the Bud Light brand in anger. Consumers have made a choice. An executive at a Texas-based beer distributor said they have left Bud Light and that's how it's going to be. I don't envision a big percentage of them coming back. None of these people are coming back. In fact, it's going to get even worse as their shelf space completely falls apart. From the New York Post, Bud Light shelf space bar taps are being reallocated for other beers, according to the Molson Coors CEO. And we've seen this. You've seen videos probably by now of Bud Light taps being removed and replaced in bars. Bud Light has dropped to at least 4th in popularity, down from number 1 in popularity in bars and restaurants. The problem with that is when you have 3 taps available at a bar or a restaurant, number 4 means you're not going to sell any beer there now. It's much, much less opportunity for them to sell beer in any on-premise location. And even in the off-premise locations, they're losing shelf space literally because stores can't afford to stock anything. Doesn't matter what the brand or the product is if the product isn't in demand. They can have a little bit of it, but it needs to sell. And then if it doesn't sell, they're going to take less and less valuable shelf space and give it to something that doesn't sell instead of something like their competing brands that right now are selling. Speaking of selling, Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, has decided they need to sell off 8 of their beer brands and breweries to a pot growing company that is also in the craft beer business. They're expected to get around $85 million for it at the end of September, which is just next month, and that will bring in some really needed cash. Anheuser-Busch InBev is selling 8 of its beer and beverage companies to cannabis grower Tilray Brands for $85 million. Tilray Brands is a pot company. They are a public company, and it's a $1.2 billion company by market value. Tilray will acquire Shock Top, Breckenridge Brewery, Point Brewing Company, 10 Barrel Brewing Company, Redhook Brewery, Widmer Brothers Brewing, Mile Cider Company, and HiBall Energy, the company said in a statement on Monday. Tiffany's shares soared by more than 11% on the news. Tilray describes itself as a pioneer in cannabis research, cultivation, and distribution with more than 20 cannabis, hemp, and beer brands in many countries. The sale comes as Anheuser-Busch posted a 10.5% drop in U.S. revenues as Bud Light sales tanked following the backlash against the beer brand's collaboration with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. The $85 million transaction includes current employees, breweries, and brew pubs associated with the brands. The purchase will be paid for entirely in cash, and the transaction is expected to close by the end of September. Irwin Simon, chairman of the CEO of Tilray, said the acquisition is a major step forward in the company's diversification strategy. So they don't want to just sell pot, they want to sell pot and beer. The purchase is expected to make Tilray the 5th largest craft brewer in the U.S., up from 9th with 5% craft beer market share, according to the company. Quote, "We're excited to work with the teams behind these iconic brands that command great consumer loyalty and have a history of delivering strong award-winning products with tremendous growth opportunities," Simon said in a statement. So why is Anheuser-Busch selling off these brands right now and these breweries? Well, basically being associated with Anheuser-Busch is not something that's going to help any of these craft beer divisions. And you would expect as they get ready for layoffs, this is a way for them to get rid of some employees that they're not going to have to lay off. This division is something that Anheuser-Busch calls the high end, and these are key brands for them to develop in the craft beer market. Obviously, the craft market is the thing that's really been growing for them, Bud Light wasn't growing for them really before the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco. It's not growing for them now. Stella Artois is a great brand for them. These brands they're selling are brands they could have kept and they could have developed. But what winds up happening with these companies is if they're not getting credit for owning the brands in their stock price, they don't consider it worth it to hold on to the brands. So you've got Shock Top here. One of the brands they're selling is their number 2 high-end priority brand. Why are they selling this brand? Doesn't really make sense, except if they know they need to lay off a lot of people, get rid of a lot of production, and they want the cash right now. Shock Top is supposedly the number 7 US high-end brand, and here they are selling it and a bunch of other brands to a pot company for some quick cash next month. It's hard to believe that such a big company can fall so far so fast, but that's one of the things that Anheuser-Busch proves is possible. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I'll see you again soon with another video, and if I don't see you, I will miss you.